Hello and welcome to season 7 of the Forza Napoli podcast. I am your host, Joe Fischetti. Thank you so much for tuning in. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Napoli's new winger, Noa Lang, who just recently joined Napoli. And I will be joined by a good friend and Dutch journalist to help me out with that. But before I introduce him, I just want to address a couple of admin items before we get into the episode. So, first, if you don't follow me on social media and if you only get your podcast from the audio version, we are now finally on YouTube. I'm an old man now and I'm not the quickest with updating technology. And I was joking with a few friends that, hey, have you guys heard about this new app called YouTube? Which obviously has been around for a long time, but we finally made the move over to YouTube. So you'll be able to still get your audio version on Apple and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcast. But if you're into the video, then you can watch a show on YouTube, and that'll give me some video qualities that I can mix into the podcast as well. I know the younger generation, my son is all about YouTube, so hopefully that's appreciated. The other shout out I want to make is to my good friend Frank Pila. If you are listening to the audio version of the podcast, you would have noticed there's new intro music. Frank recorded that for us, so I'm very grateful to Frank for helping out with the audio. All right, so let me introduce our guest. He is, as I said, a good friend of mine and a Dutch journalist. He's been on the podcast before. He currently works for is it BN de Stem, covering NAC Breda, which I think is a Dutch club that our guest can talk more about. Jurre van Wanrooij, welcome back.
Thank you, Joe. Very happy to be back. And yes, I'm covering NAC Breda. That's true. They got promoted 2 seasons ago to the Eredivisie, the highest tier of Dutch football. And yeah, it's been a blast the last season to work in the highest tier of Dutch football and get to see a lot of interesting players. Noa Lang, of course, one of them. So that's quite interesting, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about him.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I want to have you on, to leverage your knowledge of Dutch football. Obviously, as you said, you cover Dutch football, but you're also a massive Serie A fan, so it's a great kind of link between the two leagues. Um, Noa Lang is only the third Dutchman actually to play for Napoli. The first was Ruud Krol, who everybody knows. The second was Jonathan de Guzman, who I personally consider more of a Canadian than a Dutchman.
Yeah, yeah,
But so we haven't had a lot of Dutch players, so that's exciting, especially for Napoli. We've seen this over the years where we tend to bring in players from different parts of the world, and that excites their fan bases, and we make new fans, hopefully new Napoli fans through that approach. But how long have you been following Noa Lang for? Because he came up through the Dutch youth system with Ajax, and then he left for a few years to play in Belgium before coming back to the Netherlands.
yeah. He's always been like one of those more known talents because Ajax under 21s, they play in the second tier of Dutch football. So you see a lot of their talent already playing against other sides, other well-known sides, and Noah Lang has been quite a fan favorite over the years. One of the bigger names coming up through the Ajax academy. Quite young when he made the first step towards the first team, and then I think pretty quickly he wanted more playing time, and he also went on loan to FC Twente, which is quite a big team in the Netherlands, and yeah, that's where he first showcased his real talent, and also starting some games, making more minutes, and he always had this hunger and confidence that he was ready for more playing time and to show himself and make an impact, and that's the reason why he went to Belgium, to Club Brugge, and also a very big team in Belgium, comparable to PSV and Ajax in the Netherlands, and that's where he first started to make an impact, and then it all went pretty quickly. I think he even was at Club Brugge when Louis van Gaal selected him for the Dutch squad for the World Cup in Qatar. Almost no playing time, but when Van Gaal sees some talent in you, then you're a pretty good player, and he's always been quite an interesting player because he's one of those players that just takes on his man, tries to beat his man. And you also notice, Joe, that in football is getting a little bit more special if you can find a player like that. There's not a lot of wingers out there right now that can really take on their man and beat him. It's like everyone's like passing and not losing the ball, and the half spaces are one of the most important areas on the football pitch. And Lang has always been someone who's just sure that he can beat his man, and sure that he can take on his man. And what also is funny is that Lang also played in the youth academy of Feyenoord, the biggest rival of Ajax, and then he went to Ajax. So he's quite a controversial guy as well. Very honest, but very controversial.
Yeah, I noticed that it seemed, I don't know, a lot of people blame kind of Pep Guardiola for this and turning players kind of into robots with this like pure system play, and we're losing, the number 10 is almost an extinct position, and also players that can take on their man. We had one in Cavada, obviously, but they're becoming a bit of a rare breed as well. One thing I didn't realize, and maybe you can educate me and the listeners and viewers a little bit about this, is that it seems like in Dutch football, the U21 teams, at least for the bigger clubs, they actually play in the second division of Dutch football rather than in like a U21 league. And he actually did
Yeah.
quite well there with the Ajax U21 team.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a couple of years now that they gave some youth teams the opportunity to go and play in the second tier, which you can't get relegated out of. So a lot of the youth teams this year were at the bottom. So there are like four youth teams right now in the second tier. Ajax, PSV, Feyenoord. Feyenoord is not there. AZ and FC Utrecht, they have their under 21s in the second tier, and they can't get relegated. So this year it was like Utrecht, PSV at the bottom, and when they started this experiment, it's not really an experiment because there's just not a lot of full-time professional teams in the Netherlands. So it was also kind of needed to put some under 21 teams in, and it's also good for the development of the players, of course. But when they started this experiment, Young Ajax, that's how it's called. It means youth Ajax, and they were quite a contender for the title as well. But they of course can't get promoted to the Eredivisie because Ajax is playing there. But in the earlier years, they were a really dominant team, and the teams that Noa Lang played in as well were some really really talented sides. So it was also already quite good to see players in those sides because you can really see how they play for a dominant team. Because of course, if you're gonna loan someone out to a different team, you just don't know if the play style is gonna play and is comparable to the play style he will eventually play in at Ajax. And for young Ajax, this was the this was why it was positive for the players to play there, because they were just in the Ajax development, in the Ajax atmosphere, but they could develop themselves a little bit more. So that's why basically why it's like that in the Netherlands.
Yeah, we're starting to see something similar in Italy with the development of U21 teams, except they're playing in the third division. Maybe it's because there are more clubs, stronger clubs, or I guess it's a bit deeper, the talent pool in Italy, perhaps. But he did do quite well with the U21 team. In his first season, he scored 5 goals and added 3 assists in 22 appearances. In his second season, he had 5 goals and 4 assists in only 9 appearances. He also had a couple of call ups to the senior team. He scored 3 goals there, all of them in the same match against FC Twente. I think it was a 5-2 come from behind victory. And the reason he had so few appearances with the U21 team that season is because for the second half of the season, he then joined FC Twente on loan. His stats weren't the greatest. I'm sure he played well, but he only had 1 goal, I believe. And partly the reason why he joined FC Twente was because Ajax had signed Ryan Babel, kind of plays the same position, so they didn't really have a need for him there. But after that quick loan spell at FC Twente, he was purchased by Club Brugge. It was a loan, 1 year loan with obligation to buy for, I believe, 6 million euros. Now, I don't imagine you watched a whole lot of Belgian football at the time, but you know someone who did.
Yeah, that's true. The coach of NAC Breda is Carl Hoefkens, and he's an ex-player of Club Brugge, and he also coached Noa Lang there. He worked with him closely, and it's quite difficult to explain, but in the Netherlands, Noa Lang is just quite a controversial guy. He just talks straight from the heart. He doesn't think everything through. I think that's a beautiful thing, that he's a pure football player that just says whatever is on his mind and on his heart. But it's not always, people have not always been enjoying him doing that. And what Hoefkens, the coach of NAC, now told us was something about Noa Lang also, with disabled kids, mentally disabled kids, that he was such a nice person to them, and he was so nice to them, and um, people were surprised to see his other side, because on the pitch he is very self confident. Outside of the pitch, he's very, he thinks he's the best. He thinks he knows he's the best, but he also has a good heart. And I think that's the kind of player and person you're getting. Someone who just says whatever he thinks, and someone that talks from the heart. Also, when PSV lost against Ajax, I think in the start of April, he just said after the game, "It's over. Championship is over. They're 10 points ahead. They were the far better team. It's done. We don't deserve anything." And even the PSV captain wouldn't say such things, but that's just the way he is. Everybody can tell him otherwise, but he will just say whatever is on his mind.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple times that he's can be controversial. He did get himself sort of into a bit of some hot water during his time at Club Brugge, where I think he joined some fans, and this was maybe just his passion coming out, but he joined the fans in a chant, and it so happens that this chant was directed at their rivals. I think it was Anderlecht, I want to say,
Yeah,
but Anderlecht is known for, from what I read, having a Jewish community, and the chant was viewed as being anti-Semitic. So there was a big story about that. He also refused to apologize for it. So take what you will of that. You can you can say that's a fault, or you can say that he's just someone who firmly has his views, and he firmly believes, as you suggested, like he speaks his mind, and he is not ashamed and doesn't hold back. But on the pitch, I feel like offensively he really exploded, at least looking just at the stats. Obviously I didn't watch him play in Belgium, but in his 3 seasons at Club Brugge, he had 20 plus goal contributions every single season. His first season, 17 goals, 11 assists, and 17 appearances. Second season, 9 goals and 15 assists and 48 appearances, and this is across all competitions. And then in his third season, 12 goals and 8 assists, and that then got him back to the Netherlands, because PSV then stepped up and made a big money purchase. I want to say it was a record signing. I've seen different reports, somewhere
Ooh,
in the 12.5 to 15 million euros. Maybe it was a record signing for PSV, or at the time I'm not sure, but
it could have been.
obviously,
It could have
yeah,
been. Yeah, it was
ob-
pretty. It was a pretty big figure for PSV standards. Yeah.
yeah, and so obviously, um, he did well enough there to then draw the attention of Napoli. But just what did you make of his time? Obviously, being a Dutch journalist, you probably watched a lot more of him in the last couple of years. What did you make of his time at PSV?
What is very funny is that when he joined PSV, there was one fan that called the club and he said, "If this guy is going to play for my team, then I don't want a season ticket at PSV." So he canceled his season ticket, and then a couple of days later, the club called him and they said like, please think about it again. You've been here for like 10, 15 years. And he said, fine, fine, I will come. And they actually interviewed this guy after PSV became champions for the second time. And this guy was like, I still agree on everything I thought about Noa Lang, about him having a big ego, him not fitting the club, because PSV is from the south of the Netherlands, while Lang is from the part of the Netherlands, where you have Rotterdam and Amsterdam, kind of the more important area of the country. So a lot of people were saying like he doesn't fit at PSV because PSV is a hardworking club, always against the elites, and people just didn't see Lang playing there. But this guy, at the end of 2 championships, he said about Lang, he said, everything I said, I still stand by that, but I must except he's a great player and also a great human being. So that kind of sums up his 2 seasons in a very short sentence. But what is funny is that when PSV became champions, not this season but the season before, Lang struggled a lot with injuries. Also because that's another thing about Lang. He said the club didn't treat my injuries well, and of course it must have been partly true because it's his body, so he probably knows. But he said like last year when they were at the city hall, he said next year we're going to be standing here again, and I'm going to be way more important than I was this season. And if you look at the stats, I think you can't deny that he did that, and that is true. And he's just that guy. He's just confident, cocky, has a big ego, but also a big heart. And I think this season he really made another step up because everybody knew what he was capable of. But this season he finally showed as well, also in the Champions League against teams like Juventus. He of course he showed that when he has his day and when he is on fire, he can take on probably almost every European defender. I'm not saying he's gonna succeed every time, but he's always gonna try. And he was by far the best player from PSV if he was really in form. And I think if you're a Napoli fan and you know when they got Lozano, he was also a big player at PSV. But Lozano was a little bit more one-dimensional, with his pace. He was just a bit of a pace abuser as well. He was pretty good, but what you're getting with Lang is just way more. He has many more qualities than Lozano, and I think maybe he even was better as well at PSV. But Lozano, I think, had just a little bit more impressive numbers. But you're not only getting the numbers with Lang, you're also really getting an interesting player, a player that tries, like Kvaratskhelia, a player that just takes on his man, a dying breed in football, really. And I think that must have been really exciting if you're a Napoli fan.
Well, I think Napoli fans will certainly be happy to hear that he's offers more than Lozano because Lozano has a few haters in
Yeah.
Napoli. Despite, I mean, he had some really good periods with Napoli, but overall, I think for the transfer fee that Napoli paid for him, most would consider him just a little bit disappointing. We also got Dries
Mhm.
Mertens from PSV, which is a much
Yeah.
happier, much
Yeah.
happier story, I think, for Napoli fans. You mentioned his stats last season and the injuries before. In his first season at PSV, he only played about 1,100 minutes, 19 appearances, still managed 5 goals and 2 assists, which is not horrible, especially for a winger. But as you said, he really exploded last season. He kind of picked up where he left off at Club Brugge with 14 goals and 12 assists in 44 appearances across all competitions. One thing I want to ask you, because you've been very clear on his confidence and in himself, and predicting that they would win the league or be that impressive to win the league is obviously another sign of confidence. So is the fact that he has his own music video, which we can get to later. But you know, at the same time, Napoli. So part of the reason I'm so focused on the goals and the assists, obviously he offers a lot more than that, but it's because Napoli really lacked goal scoring last season, especially from the wings. David Neres spent some time injured, so we had Spinazzola playing on the wing, who's not going to score a lot of goals for you. On the opposite side, Matteo Politano was essentially playing as a defensive, kind of a wing back and a more defensive role. So he didn't score a lot of goals. So we relied a lot on Lukaku and our attacking midfielders, McTominay and Gisa, to score the goals. So I think it's really exciting for Napoli fans to have a winger who has the potential to be a significant goal contributor and really the proper replacement to Cavada, who obviously scored a lot of goals at Napoli. At the same time, though, Napoli are also linked to, like, seriously linked to Dan and Doy. And I just wonder, for a guy who's so confident like Noa Lang is, do you think he'd be willing to accept potentially a backup role at least in his initial year at Napoli?
He's probably not going to be happy about it because, like you said as well, he just thinks he's the best in the world, and he really does believe that. But it can also motivate him well. I think I told one of my friends the other week. I said, Noa Lang and Conte, it can work out in two ways. They can have like a big fight and then it will be over after a year. But if Conte can like touch Noa Lang with his words, with his motivations, then you're getting an even better version of Noa Lang. So I think it kind of depends as well on how Conte and Lang will click, because at PSV, Lang had Peter Bos as a coach, which he who also worked at Ajax, so he probably knew Lang, yeah, just a little bit more about the environment he came from. So I think it's going to be really important to see how Conte is gonna is going to talk to Lang and how he's going to manage him. I think that's the most important thing. If he can make Lang like trust his story, his play style, then I think it shouldn't be a problem that you're also getting Dan and Doy. But it's going to be all about managing that because Lang has never played very far from his home, and now he's making a big step to the south of Italy. So there's going to be some complications probably, but if Conte can get the best out of him like he's done with so many players before, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I think that might help actually. The fact that he's going to a new country where they speak a different language. And on top of that, even if you speak Italian, you're not going to start under Conte right away because he has such a specific way he wants his players to play that it takes time for Conte to feel confident in them to fit, play the role that he wants them to play and to be physically fit enough to play. So one of the things most Napoli fans are really excited about this year is that Napoli have been very active very early in the Mercato. So that Conte should have most of his new signings probably within a week of starting the summer ritiri, which allows him to prepare them for the start of the plenty of time to prepare for the start of the season. The other thing is Napoli are competing in 4 competitions this year, so hopefully there'll be enough minutes to go around that nobody really feels like they're not playing enough between Serie A, the expanded Champions League, the Supercoppa, and the Coppa Italia. Um, you've talked about Lang's confidence and his willingness to take on his men. Um, what other technical abilities can you tell us about? One thing I noticed, I mean, obviously he's a left winger, but he's right-footed, so he's an inverted left winger. Um, we talked about the goals and the assists, but I did notice, and obviously any highlight package or reels, you got to take them with a grain of salt. But he does have the ability to score with both feet as well. What other kind of technical abilities can you tell us about?
Yeah, well, he's just quite diverse on the wing as well. Like you said, he's an inverted winger, so what he prefers is to cut inside and then just try to go for the far post. But I think one of the matches where he showed this was against Juventus. I think PSV Juventus in Eindhoven. If you want to have a good image of who Noah Lang is, I think you should try to watch that match in I think it was the round in between the group stage and in between the round of 16. You can watch that match because I think he also tries to go around the outside there. And PSV, of course, had Luc de Jong, a very tall striker, which some of you might know from Newcastle and Sevilla and Barcelona. So he had the occasional cross in him as well, but he's just a guy that likes to make a skill move as well, try to bait his opponent out and just very good on the ball, very quick as well. He's just very all round really, and he also the PSV he played in was quite a possession based team, so I would say he's quite good with the passing and stuff as well. There's like if you're talking about him as straightly as a winger, then I think there's almost no negatives there. It's just that can he also do the defensive work, that Conte probably desires of him? Does he want to track back? In the Eredivisie, when PSV are playing the smaller sides from around 10 to 18, then he didn't really have to do any defensive work. So it's going to be a question of is he willing to also put some energy into that? Because I think attacking when he's on his day, he feels good, then he can go around the outside, he can go to the inside, then it's going to be good. He's been one of the most like gifted players we had at PSV for a while because he has all the ability to do what he wants, but he really needs to want it as well.
Yeah, that'll be obviously an important thing for Conte, right? Like you're right, he demands that his players work hard, and it will be a different system because Conte teams generally don't keep possession as much as some other clubs do, and they tend to be more counterattacking. But I think you know his ability to take on a man, I think, goes hand in hand with crossing the ball because often you're going to beat your man on the outside and then you're going to be looking to play across into the area. And Conte has very consciously constructed a side that wants to cross the ball. If you look at the size of the players with Lukaku, with McTominay, with Anguissa, now a guy like Lorenzo Luca joining or about to join Napoli, they're building a team that is tall, right? So you need guys that can cross the ball. Thankfully, we also signed Kevin De Bruyne, which is not the subject of this video, but on to that point about having good crossers, because one of the big frustrations for Napoli supporters over the years, the last few years, is that we never seem to have a guy that could play a decent cross into the area. We always have someone like Matteo Politano who can't get the ball past the first post, which is really frustrating. Or even worse, before that, we would just do these short corners and end up passing the ball all the way back to our goalkeeper and not even playing across into the area. So to have guys like, obviously De Bruyne can cross the ball, it's nice to have a guy like Noa Lang that can play across as well. And if it's not, necessarily his strongest point, I think that'll be something that Conte kind of focuses on improving.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, if you see what Conte has done with, for example, Scott McTominay, if a player just really believes in whatever Conte's trying to say, if the desire is there, I think it shouldn't be a problem. It's just you have to always see how a player, reacts to a different environment. It's far away from home. It could be an advantage. It could not be because, yeah, it's just going to be difficult to predict. But if you get the player that I've seen in the last season, you're just getting such a confident player that I think he could perform. He could perform anywhere, and like I said, you should watch the 3-1 win from PSV against Juventus. You can see him give an assist to Perisic, which was just fantastic. The way he just sees everything. That was one of the days where he just really showed who Noa Lang is, and it's just going to be very interesting to see if he can keep that up in a higher competition as well. Because let's be honest, he's played in the Netherlands and in Belgium. Those are not the strongest leagues in Europe. With a lot of teams that want to play football. And in Italy, of course, you're gonna also have some teams that are just gonna like build a wall in the defense and not gonna let him pass. So it's just gonna be really interesting to see what the plan is here and how he's gonna perform.
Sorry, I'm smirking because I know you're a Juve fan, and I was gonna say, well, maybe Juve is not exactly the strongest competition either.
No,
But
no,
no, it's a fair
especially not,
point. It's on the
especially
big
not
stage too.
before the new year.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, it's a much bigger stage in the Champions League. Juve is an established team, so I'm sure many Napoli listeners and viewers are noting down that match to go watch at least the highlights of. I know you got to run soon to catch a flight to Italy, which is very exciting. But last thing I wanted to ask you about before I let you go is something I mentioned earlier, which is his music video. What do you think of? It's kind of like a pop slash hip hop kind of. Actually, I thought it
Yeah,
was very catchy.
yeah. I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you that a lot of people in the Netherlands are listening to this, like not as a joke. Like people
Yeah, yeah.
actually quite
It is
like
kind
this.
of like
This
a
this.
like a summer banger type of song, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. It's a
grab
quite a
grab
good
a
club
beer at
song
the
as
pool,
well.
or yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but he's doing this, and I think that's one of the reasons that it worked out very well at PSV is that the coach just said like if he wants to make music, let him make music. If he scores two on the weekend, it's fine, And also teammates, Malik Tillman, from Team USA, he said next time you make a song, no, I wanna join. And it's just one of his other hobbies as well, and it kind of just fits his personality really good. He just thinks he can do everything, and he's just so confident. And I think he scored like millions of streams with these songs, and it just makes him believe even more. I think that he can can do anything he wants, and I think that's quite funny to see. He's just yeah, these songs are quite popular in the Netherlands, and people quite like this. It's just you hate him or you love him, but once you get to know him, you can understand him better. There was a documentary done on his time at the Club Brugge, and it's just you see all the sides from him. It's just there are times where you're like, come on, man, you have so many abilities, just please show them. And then you see another side of him where he's really sweet with kids, making time for kids and making songs, singing, dancing with other people. So he's a really kind-hearted guy. You just have to see past, the big ego, which is also there. And I think you'll get to know him very soon. I'm expecting something good for his announcement, to be honest, because he's quite a creative person, not only on the pitch. So no, he's gonna be the talk of the town, I think.
Well, thankfully, De Laurentiis seems to have gotten away from the tacky kind of player presentations, guys showing up wearing lion costumes and stuff like that. But Napoli is a huge music city, so I think that's something he'll enjoy, especially
Yeah,
if he's into like rap. Neapolitan rap is very very popular. Also, everyone knows the passion of the Napoli supporters. So if he shows some loves to the Scunizzi and signs some shirts, which he's already done actually, like even when he landed in Napoli for his medicals. Initially, he's got his security entourage and the club officials or whatever bring him to a taxi, and he actually apparently got back out because there were a bunch of supporters there and took pictures and signed some shirts. So that type of stuff will make him quickly well loved in Napoli. But I know, like I said, you got to catch a flight, so let's wrap it up there. But before we do, if you could just let the listeners and the viewers know where they can find your work and follow you on social media.
yeah. You can find me at Wanrooij Jurre on X. The name also shown, I think, in the bottom somewhere. And yeah, not a lot of Serie A, but I try to stay updated as much as possible. But if you want to have an inside look into Dutch football, you can always follow me. And NAC Breda is really like a people's club, a real club of the people, a really nice stadium as well. So if you're ever interested, you can also always follow me or send a DM. And yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
No, it's my pleasure. And if you want to follow the podcast, you can find us on all the usual social media channels at Forza Napoli Pod, as well as on Apple, Spotify, all the places you get your podcasts. And now, as I said, on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. That always helps to improve the show and get more followers and more eyes on the show. So thank you all for listening. I will be back soon. I'm planning on doing another episode. I'm not going to reveal just yet what it's about, but it should be coming out in a couple of days. So until then, I'm Joe Fischetti. Forza Napoli sempre.